Hello and welcome to tutorial 187 from Markplex. One of the Markplex customers asked me if there was a show me study or something that would allow you to add text to a chart. For example, before the trading day began, to highlight various levels, and those labels would stay there for the day. So that's what I've done, created a simple show me study. You can see if I show you, for example, looking at this Agilent and just going to look at the studies. What we have are 10 price levels. So we just put in the price levels, and for each of those, for example, price 1 is associated with label 1, and we just put a string in there. If we're not using a string, we can just leave it like this. In other words, 2 quotes. And we can also specify which color we're using, which typeface, and the size of the font. So let me go to, for example, a 10-second chart. Incidentally, this only works with TradeStation because we're using objects. And if we just watch this, you'll see that every 10 seconds we get a new bar. And what will happen is that all these labels would be shifted so they remain at the end of the chart. And so you don't see, if we didn't do that, of course, the labels would start to drift over to the left of the chart. You can see it moving there. So let's have a look at the program, and hopefully this might be useful for you. We've got the inputs that I just described, of course. We've also included various namespaces that we need for the items that we're using. EL system.drawing, EL system.drawing objects, EL system.collections, and EL system. The main guts of the program, I decided to do the drawing in a method because we're going to be calling it several times for several different labels. What we do is we have some inputs. We have price, text string, and color. We use a couple of objects which are, their scope is just the scope of the method. And for example, DT point and the text label temp label. So first of all, we create a DT point, using the DT point dot create, and we put into that the DT. DT is defined when the program first runs in a one statement, and what it does, it just gets the get app info AI write display date time. In other words, the most right date time of the chart. Now, what's a little confusing with all of this is that there's two sorts of date times in TradeStation, as you may know. One of them is a double and the other one is an object, and they're both called the same name, which is very, very confusing. But if we use get app info, we get the version which is a double. But what we want to do is convert it into a date time object. And we do that using this little handy syntax. So we first of all create DT, and then we use dt.el date time x, and we put into that the get app info AI write date time. So that does a conversion for us. So our method is actually using that value and the price, which is the price input. Then we create the text label. We don't want it to persist. We set the color. Then we use the V style and the H style, and you can see here we could have bottom, center, top, center, left, right for the H style. You can experiment with those. We're setting up a specific font. We're using a typeface and a font size. Now they're actually inputs to the program, and you can see here typeface. I've just used Arial because it's most likely going to be on your computer, and font size 10, but you can use other ones as I've done in this demonstration. Then we set the point value, which is using this thing that we just created above, DT point. We set the text string, and we do that using the input text txt.str, and we're locking it. So it means if we go to the chart, we can't just manually move this around. And the reason we're doing that is because we're calling this initially, or actually the only time we're calling it is in the one statement at the beginning, and we're putting the value of the text label into a vector which is called label vect. So in order to use that, we have to create label vect. We do that here. Label vect equals vector.create, and then we're using pushback. So that basically pushes them back. So the one that put in first will be at the 0 position, then the next one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And what I've also done here is I've said if label 1, which is actually the string that's going to go in label 2, label 3, etc. If they're just two quotes together, there isn't a value in them, then we don't run the method. So having done that, we've created the things initially at the right of the chart, but of course they would just get moved along the chart as it developed. So what we need to do is find a way of knowing when a new chart has been added to the chart. And we do that in this section down here. Let's just do it in reverse order. A variable called write display dt is set to the value get app info AI write date time. Now this variable write display dt, if we look at our variables, you'll notice that it's an intrabar persist. And what we do on every tick is we check if that value write display dt is different from get app info AI write display time. So we know the very tick that this value is different, that a new bar has been added to the chart. And then we go through the vector in a for end loop, and we go from using this counter I CTR, we go from 0 to the count, the number of items in the vector. What we need to do is just move the position, not the price level. So the date position, not the price level. So first of all, we store into a value called temp label, the text label that is the one we're currently analyzing. And we need to find out what is the value. So first of all, we store the date time value into a variable called dtpt. And then we need to reset the position. And we do that using a set point value, and we know the dt point.create. We've got two items there. One is the dt, which is the new position that we've calculated up here, most recent bar to the right of the chart. And then we need to keep the price the same, so we can do that by just using the price attribute of dtpt. The syntax for that is dtpt.price, and that's all there is to it. So there's probably a number of ways you could achieve this, but this is the one that I chose in this instance. Hopefully this might be useful to you. If you're not on the Markplex email list, then please subscribe, and also subscribe to wherever you're watching this video. Thank you very much.